In the endless story of humankind, there are moments that rise like mountains, shaping the very landscape of our destiny. These are moments when the spark of human imagination met the force of necessity, and from their union came inventions that changed the world forever. Among these miracles of the mind, there is one so simple in shape, so perfect in form, and yet so infinite in consequence that it became the very foundation of civilization. This is the story of the wheel, long before cities, before empires, before written words. Humanity lived in a world of limits. The first people walked across plains and forests with little more than what their own bodies could carry. They hunted, they gathered, they built shelters from wood and stone, but they were bound by distance. Every journey was measured in aching steps. Every load of food, every piece of wood, every stone had to be lifted, dragged, or balanced. Life was effort, constant and unforgiving. Imagine a family after a long hunt, returning with the heavy weight of an animal across rough ground, each step a struggle. Imagine the builder who dreamed of raising stone walls, but could only move what his back allowed. Imagine the farmer who harvested more grain than his arms could carry, forced to leave behind the reward of his own labor. Nature itself seemed to conspire against progress. Stones resisted movement. Earth dragged at every burden. Even when people learned to use sledges, pulling heavy loads across the ground, friction always pulled back, slowing them down, demanding more strength than most could give. Humanity was clever, but it was trapped in its own weakness. And yet, even in this age of limits, the human mind was restless. People watched the world around them. They noticed the way round things rolled. They saw logs tumble down hills with ease. They saw the moon in the sky, the endless cycle of the seasons, the circle of the sun. The shape of the circle was everywhere in nature, eternal and unbroken. And deep within the imagination of someone, thousands of years ago, came the idea that this shape, this perfect form, might hold the key to freedom. The first wheel was not born in a single moment. It was not the gift of a god, nor the stroke of sudden luck. It was a process, an evolution of thought. Early humans may have first used logs as rollers, placing them under heavy objects to move them more easily. It was crude, but it worked. A giant stone that would take hundreds of arms to drag could be made to glide forward, with the rolling of tree trunks beneath it. But this method was imperfect. The logs had to be constantly replaced. Movement was slow, uneven, and limited. Yet from this, the seed of the idea was planted. At some forgotten time, perhaps in the fertile lands of Mesopotamia around 3500 BC, a genius of the ancient world looked at the rolling log and imagined something greater. What if the rolling piece itself could be shaped, perfected, and attached to what it carried? What if movement did not depend on chance, but on design? And so, with patience and vision, the first wooden wheel was carved. It was not light. It was not elegant. A solid disc of wood, heavy and rough, fixed to a wooden axle. But when it turned, the world changed. For the first time in history, weight could be lifted off the earth, placed upon a cart, and moved with astonishing ease. A burden that once broke the backs of many could now be carried by a single cart pulled by animals. A distance that once felt endless could now be crossed with hope. The wheel was not just an invention, it was liberation. But do not imagine that the wheel spread instantly. At first, it was rare, almost magical. To see a cart rolling across the ground must have seemed like a miracle to those who witnessed it. And indeed, it required great skill. To make a wheel turn smoothly demanded precision. The circle had to be perfect, the axle strong, the joint exact. It was more than carpentry, it was the birth of engineering. The earliest wheels were solid, heavy, and slow. But even these crude shapes transformed society. Farmers could carry their harvests farther. Builders could move stone for temples and walls. Traders could carry goods across greater distances, connecting villages that had once been isolated. With wheels, the boundaries of human life began to stretch. The invention became the beating heart of movement, of connection, of growth. Over centuries, the wheel evolved, from solid wood to lighter designs, from the heavy cart to the swift chariot. In Mesopotamia, the wheel helped shape the cradle of civilization. In Egypt, wheels carried stones from monuments that touched the sky. In India and China, wheels became tools not only for transport, but for craft, for pottery, for the very act of shaping clay into vessels that carried water, food, and culture itself. And yet, the wheel was more than a tool. It was a symbol. The circle has always been sacred in human thought, the cycle of life and death, the endless passage of time, the heavens themselves turning like a great wheel above us. When ancient people looked at the wheel, they saw not only a machine, but a reflection of eternity. Kings carved wheels upon their seals. Priests spoke of the wheel of life. Philosophers saw in it the order of the cosmos. Imagine for a moment the world before the wheel, and then imagine the transformation after it. Roads began to form, carved by the passage of carts. Markets grew, fed by the exchange of goods carried from distant lands. Armies moved swifter, their chariots striking fear into their enemies. Ideas, once trapped by distance, now traveled freely, carried by wheels across deserts and plains. The wheel was not just a device. It was the engine of civilization itself. But even as it spread, it was not universal. Some regions, like the great civilizations of the Americas, developed brilliant cultures without it, relying on other forms of transport. And yet, wherever the wheel did appear, it became impossible to imagine life without it. Over time, it would evolve into countless forms on carts, on mills, on machines, on ships, and finally, in the engines of industry. But all of that belongs to later chapters. Here, at the dawn of the story, the wheel stands as the first great triumph of engineering, born of observation, carved by patience, and perfected by necessity. It carried humanity from a world of limits into a world of possibility. The simple circle became the most powerful shape in history. This is where our journey begins, the journey of the wheel, the circle that never ends, the invention that became the very axis on which the story of civilization turns. The story of the wheel does not end with its first carving from wood. In truth, that was only the dawn, the opening chapter of a saga that would stretch across centuries and cultures. What began as a rough disc slowly transformed into one of the most refined creations of the human hand, a symbol of progress that would carry people to new heights of power and imagination. As the wheel spread through Mesopotamia, its presence began to reshape society itself. Farmers no longer lived only for survival. With carts pulled by oxen, they could bring larger harvests to growing towns. Grain, fruits, vegetables, and animals were no longer bound to the fields where they were grown. Trade began to bloom. Villages connected. Communities expanded. The wheel was not merely an invention of movement, it was the invention of exchange. Where once people lived in isolation, now they began to live in networks. The wheel made markets possible. A farmer could grow more than his family needed and carry the rest to sell or barter. Craftsmen could shape tools, pots, and jewelry and see their creations travel far beyond their homes. With wheels under their carts, people became connected not only by land, but by imagination. An object made in one village could find its way to another, carrying with it stories, culture, and influence. The wheel was becoming the lifeblood of civilization. And yet, the story was not only about trade and harvest. It was also about power. In Mesopotamia and Egypt, wheels soon found their place on the battlefield. Heavy wooden carts were transformed into swift chariots, pulled by horses, their wheels thinner, lighter, and stronger. To the armies that used them, the chariot was a weapon of speed, a machine of terror. Against foot soldiers, a wheel-mounted warrior was almost unstoppable. In the ancient world, the wheel was not just a tool of survival, it was a tool of dominance. From the Fertile Crescent to the banks of the Nile, from the plains of India to the valleys of China, the wheel became the silent force behind empires. In India, the wheel became not only a device of movement, but a sacred symbol. The great wheel of Dharma represented eternal truth and cosmic order. Even today, that same symbol shines at the center of India's flag. In China, wheelbarrows became essential to farmers and builders, allowing one person to carry what once took many. The wheel was no longer just an invention, it was an idea that civilizations embraced, shaped, and made their own. And yet, the wheel itself was evolving. Early solid wooden discs were strong, but heavy. They demanded great effort from the animals that pulled them. Then came the genius of the spoke wheel, lighter and faster, allowing vehicles to move with greater speed. This transformation turned the wheel from a burden into a blessing. From slow carts to swift chariots, from simple transport to engines of strategy and war, the spoke wheel was a leap forward, one that gave empires the edge they needed to expand and dominate. But the wheel's influence reached far beyond the battlefield. Consider pottery, one of humanity's oldest crafts. The invention of the potter's wheel allowed clay to be shaped with elegance, speed, and symmetry. What once took hours of careful molding could now be formed in minutes. The potter's wheel carried within it not just utility, but beauty. It gave us vessels of art, of ceremony, of daily life. It brought refinement into homes, into temples, into the rhythms of existence. The wheel became the silent partner of progress. Mills began to turn with great wheels powered by water, grinding grain into flour, giving birth to bread that would feed multitudes. Later, windmills would rise with their great turning arms, capturing the power of the wind to grind and pump and move. The wheel was no longer just on the ground beneath carts. It had risen into the sky, turning with water and air, turning with the forces of nature itself. But even in this age of wonder, the wheel remained a challenge of craft. To shape a wheel was to shape perfection. A circle that was uneven would wobble, break, or drag. To make a wheel true required a deep understanding of balance, of geometry, of strength. The wheel was not a crude invention. It was a teacher, pushing human hands and minds toward precision. In shaping wheels, humanity was shaping mathematics. The idea of pi, the ratio of the circle, lived within every wheel ever carved. The perfection of the circle became the foundation of science, of architecture, of engineering. Imagine the awe of a villager, centuries ago, watching the first chariot sweep across the plains. Imagine the pride of a potter as his wheel spun clay into a vessel of perfect form. Imagine the wonder of a farmer as his cart carried harvests once thought impossible to move. The wheel was no longer an experiment. It was a revolution. But what makes the wheel so extraordinary is not only its practicality, but its universality. It belongs to no single culture, no single land. From Mesopotamia to Egypt, from Greece to Rome, from India to China, the wheel became the companion of human destiny. Each society shaped it differently, improved it, used it in unique ways. Yet everywhere, it carried the same message, that humanity was no longer bound by the slow pace of its own body. With the wheel, we became a species of movement, of expansion, of connection. The story of the wheel is the story of humanity learning to overcome distance, weight, and time. And as the centuries passed, it continued to evolve, to inspire, to open doors that once seemed forever closed. This is not merely a story of wood and stone. It is a story of vision. For the wheel is more than a circle. It is a reminder of what happens when the human mind dares to see possibility where others see limitation. It is proof that progress is not found in strength, but in imagination. And this, too, is only the beginning. For while the wheel gave birth to agriculture, to trade, to war, to art, its greatest transformations were still to come. From the empires of antiquity to the engines of industry, the wheel would carry humanity into the future, turning endlessly, as eternal as the circle itself. The wheel, by the time of the great empires, was no longer just a simple invention. It had become a force woven into the very fabric of civilization. Nowhere was this more evident than in Rome, a city that rose from modest beginnings to become the heart of a vast empire. And at the foundation of that empire lay not only armies and rulers, but the turning of countless wheels. The Romans understood something profound. A wheel was only as powerful as the path it traveled. And so, they built roads. Mile after mile, stone after stone, they carved routes across valleys, mountains, and rivers. Roads so precise and enduring that many still exist today. Along those roads moved carts and chariots, wagons and carriages, all riding on wheels that turned day and night. These wheels carried grain to feed cities, weapons to arm soldiers, and people to spread culture and language. Without the wheel, Rome could never have been Rome. Imagine the bustling streets of the empire's capital, wooden wheels creaking under the weight of cargo, iron rims striking sparks on stone roads, horses pulling carts loaded with goods from distant lands, olive oil from Spain, spices from the east, wine from Greece, silk from China, all arriving on wheels, each rotation carrying not only wealth, but ideas. The wheel was the silent courier of connection. It made trade routes like the Silk Road more than lines on a map. It made them lifelines of civilization. But the wheel was not only practical, it was symbolic. In Rome, the chariot race was more than sport, it was spectacle, religion, and politics combined. Thousands filled the Circus Maximus to watch wheels spin at breakneck speed, chariots colliding in a frenzy of dust and fire. For the Romans, the wheel became not just an object of movement, but an icon of glory, of danger, of human ambition itself. The spinning wheel in the arena mirrored the restless turning of human destiny. Beyond Rome, the wheel continued to shape daily life. In medieval Europe, as kingdoms rose and fell, wheels turned in mills powered by rivers. Great water wheels ground grain, sawed wood, pressed olives, and lifted buckets of water from deep wells. The wheel had grown beyond human and animal muscle. It now borrowed the strength of nature itself. To see a mill turning was to witness the fusion of invention and environment, a rhythm where humanity and earth worked together. And as towns grew, so did the need for transport. Carts carried goods to market, wagons hauled stone for castles, and carriages carried nobility across muddy roads. Each wheel, though humble in appearance, was a link in the chain of progress. Without wheels, the medieval world would have remained still, bound to footpaths and beasts of burden. With wheels, even in times of war and plague, the pulse of civilization endured. Yet, this was also an age of imagination. The wheel became part of invention not only in motion, but in thought. The concept of the wheel inspired new machines, gears, pulleys, and mechanisms that would later give birth to clocks. Time itself began to be measured by the turning of wheels within wooden boxes, their teeth meshing with perfect precision. The wheel, once a tool of farmers and warriors, had entered the realm of science and philosophy. In India, the spiritual symbolism of the wheel continued to resonate. The wheel of Dharma, the eternal cycle of life and rebirth, reminded people that existence itself was a turning, an endless movement without beginning or end. In Europe, the wheel of fortune became a metaphor for fate, for the unpredictable rise and fall of kings and kingdoms. Everywhere, the circle of the wheel was not only practical, but mystical, a mirror of both order and chaos in the human story. But progress was never without challenge. Roads in medieval Europe were often rough, muddy, and broken. Wheels cracked, wagons sank, journeys slowed. For centuries, the wheel was limited by the paths beneath it. Yet even in difficulty, people persisted. Every broken axle was repaired, every stuck cart pulled free, every journey resumed. The determination to keep wheels turning became a metaphor for resilience, a lesson that humanity would carry into future ages. And then came the whispers of change, the sparks of knowledge that would ignite the Renaissance. As thinkers revisited the wisdom of Greece and Rome, they also began to dream of machines never before imagined. Leonardo da Vinci, with his boundless genius, sketched wheels within gears, wheels within engines, wheels that could lift, move, and transform. Though many of his machines would never be built in his lifetime, his drawings foretold a future where wheels would no longer just carry carts. They would power inventions. Beyond the imagination of his age, the wheel, in this era, was not merely surviving, it was preparing to evolve into a force that would one day fuel revolutions, industries, and empires greater than Rome. Each rotation of each wheel across cobblestone, each turn of each mill by river or wind, was a step closer to an age where wheels would no longer depend on horses or rivers or even human hands. It is easy to take a wheel for granted, to see in its shape nothing but simplicity. Yet in the medieval world, it remained the hidden architect of daily life, the unseen power behind bread, behind trade, behind journeys and dreams. Every turn was progress, every spin a promise. And as the world moved toward the dawn of modernity, the wheel was waiting ready to turn humanity into a new chapter of its endless story. The dawn of the Industrial Revolution was not just a shift in technology, it was a rebirth of human ambition. For centuries, the wheel had turned slowly, tied to horses and oxen, rivers and mills. But in the smoke-filled skies of the 18th century, the wheel began to awaken as something new. No longer just a tool of movement, it became the heartbeat of machines, the engine of progress, the very symbol of modern civilization. Picture the cobbled streets of England, where workshops and factories began to rise like iron forests. Inside, wheels turned within wheels, great flywheels storing energy, gears transferring force, and pistons driving with relentless rhythm. The wheel had entered the machine age. It was no longer only a circle of wood and iron, it was the architecture of industry itself. One of the most revolutionary moments came with the steam engine. Imagine, for a moment, the first great locomotives, iron beasts breathing clouds of smoke, their steel wheels biting into rails that stretched across the land. No horse pulled these carriages. No oxen labored here. Instead, the power of steam turned pistons, and pistons turned wheels, and wheels turned history itself. The railway was born, and with it, the world grew smaller. Towns that once seemed weeks apart could now be reached in hours. Goods, people, and ideas moved with a speed that generations before could scarcely dream of. The wheel was no longer bound by the limits of muscle or river. It had found fire. It had found coal. It had found steam. The Industrial Revolution gave it wings of steel. Factories depended on the wheel. From spinning machines weaving cotton to looms clattering in endless rhythm, the wheel multiplied human effort 1,000-fold. A single machine could do the work of dozens, and each machine was powered by the turning of wheels, small, hidden wheels and gears and pulleys, or giant wheels driven by belts and shafts. The wheel had become invisible, yet more powerful than ever before. But progress came at a cost. The shriek of trains echoed across valleys, the smoke of factories darkened skies, and the relentless drive of machines reshaped human life. People left villages for cities, crowded into factory towns where wheels never stopped turning, day or night. The wheel had become the master of time itself. Work was no longer bound to the sun or the seasons, but to the relentless spin of machinery. The wheel brought prosperity, but also hardship. It gave birth to wealth, but also to sweat and struggle. It was a double-edged gift, both blessing and burden. Still, the world pressed forward. Across oceans, ships began to harness steam as well. Iron wheels turned not only on land, but also on water, powering paddle steamers that crossed rivers and seas with a steady rhythm. The great age of exploration was reborn, not by sail, but by the turning of wheels beneath decks. The wheel also found a new role in communication. The printing press, long a child of the wheel, now grew faster and more efficient with each turn of its rollers. Words leapt onto paper in quantities unimaginable before. Knowledge spread like wildfire. Books, newspapers, and pamphlets multiplied, carrying ideas across borders and sparking revolutions of thought as powerful as the industrial machines themselves. And in the quiet corners of workshops, inventors dreamed of more. They built bicycles, simple frames carried by two wheels, powered by human strength. For the first time, ordinary people could travel with speed and freedom, no longer tied to horses or carriages. The bicycle was not only a machine, it was liberation on wheels. It carried workers to factories, children to schools, lovers to secret meetings under starlight. It gave wings to the common man and woman, wheels that whispered of independence. The wheel was everywhere, and it was unstoppable. From the largest iron gears driving factories to the smallest cogs ticking inside pocket watches, it defined the industrial age. Humanity was no longer just using the wheel, it was living within a world entirely built upon it. And yet, even as steam roared and factories thundered, the wheel had not yet revealed its greatest gift. Something more was coming. The whisper of innovation stirred in the minds of inventors, tinkerers, and dreamers. The wheel would soon find a new companion, a force greater than steam, more powerful than coal, a force that would carry humanity not only across land and sea, but into the skies above. But in this moment, In the heart of the Industrial Revolution, the wheel stood as the silent conqueror of an age. It had taken humanity from farms to factories, from villages to sprawling cities, from slow journeys to thundering trains. Every turn of every wheel was progress, every rotation a new possibility. The circle that once turned slowly under the weight of clay pots and wooden carts now roared with fire and steel. The world would never be the same again. The wheel had carried us into modernity, and it was only just beginning its greatest journey. The 19th century was ending, and the 20th was dawning. Humanity stood at the edge of a new age. The smoke of the Industrial Revolution still lingered in the skies, but something even greater was stirring an age of motion, speed, and freedom. And once again, at the center of it all, was the wheel. Imagine the dusty streets of the late 1800s. Carriages still rattled on cobblestones, pulled by weary horses. Cities bustled, but movement was limited by the pace of animals and the strain of their labor. Yet, in small workshops and barns, inventors dreamed of a carriage that needed no horse, no animal at all, only wheels and an engine. And so, the automobile was born. At first, it was crude, steam-powered contraptions, noisy and unreliable, sputtering across short distances. But soon, gasoline engines emerged, compact and powerful, and they turned wheels with a force unlike anything the world had seen. The horseless carriage rolled onto the scene, and nothing would ever be the same again. Think of Carl Benz, whose motor wagon in 1886 became one of the first practical cars. Picture Bertha Benz, his wife, who made history by driving that machine over 60 miles to prove its reliability. As her wheels turned across the countryside, people stared in disbelief. Here was a machine that moved without horses, without effort, powered only by ingenuity and determination. It was not just a vehicle, it was a promise of a faster future. Soon, roads changed. No longer paused for hoof beats, they became highways of progress. Wheels spun faster, engines roared louder, and cities expanded outward, no longer confined to walking distance. The automobile gave freedom of movement to ordinary people, shrinking nations and reshaping societies. Workplaces, schools, and families were no longer bound to the rhythms of train schedules. The wheel, powered by gasoline, gave humanity personal independence like never before. But the automobile was not just about movement, it was about culture. The wheel carried jazz to new towns, families on summer holidays, and lovers on moonlit drives. It created industries of steel, oil, and rubber. It transformed landscapes, carving highways through mountains, spanning bridges across rivers, and even building entire cities designed for cars. The wheel was not just turning, it was steering civilization itself. Yet, the wheel's ambitions did not end on the ground. Humanity had always dreamed of flying, of rising into the sky like birds. For centuries, it had seemed impossible. But in 1903, on the sandy dunes of Kitty Hawk, two brothers Orville and Wilbur Wright proved otherwise. Their flying machine lifted from the earth, sustained by wings, but made possible by wheels. The Wright flyer did not leap into the sky unaided. Its small wheels rolled along the track, gathering speed, giving flight its first breath. From that moment onward, every airplane, from the simplest glider to the mightiest jet, carried wheels beneath its wings. Wheels that touched the ground in takeoff, wheels that kissed the earth in landing. Even in the conquest of the skies, the wheel remained faithful, always present, always necessary. The age of aviation transformed the globe. Distances once measured in weeks became hours. Oceans shrank. Cultures met. Ideas mingled. The wheel did not carry us merely along roads anymore. It carried us to the clouds and across the world. And as the 20th century marched forward, the wheel continued to evolve. Automobiles grew sleeker, faster, more powerful. From Henry Ford's Model T, the car of the common man, to roaring sports cars that became symbols of speed and freedom, the wheel spun relentlessly. Aviation leapt ahead, from fragile wooden planes to mighty airliners spanning continents. But behind the glamour, the wheel's silent labor continued. Tires improved, made of durable rubber. Highways expanded like veins of civilization. Airfields spread across nations, their runways lined with wheels ready to roll. The world was moving faster than ever, and at every step, it was the wheel that made it possible. Picture a child in the 1920s watching a car speed past for the first time, dust rising in its wake. Picture a family boarding a plane in the 1950s, hearts pounding with excitement as the wheels rumble and lift into the sky. Picture lovers driving along a coastal road in the 1960s, the wheels humming beneath them, carrying not just bodies, but dreams. The wheel was no longer just a tool, it had become an icon of freedom, progress, and hope. And yet, the journey was far from over. The wheel had carried us across deserts and oceans, through villages and cities, into the skies above. But its destiny still reached further, into realms that no road, no runway, no horizon could contain. The wheel would soon find itself at the edge of space itself, rolling toward the stars. For now, though, in the first half of the 20th century, the wheel stood as the faithful servant of invention and imagination. It had transformed not only the way we moved, but the way we lived, dreamed, and believed. The circle that once turned in silence beneath wooden carts was now the thunder of engines and the whisper of flight. The wheel was no longer just a circle, it was the very motion of modern life. The wheel had already carried humanity across fields, roads, and oceans. It had turned in factories, powered machines, and transformed cities. But in the 20th century, the wheel began to chase a dream far beyond Earth itself. For the first time in history, the wheel was not just a tool for moving across the land, it was a bridge to the stars. Imagine the dawn of the space age. Rockets rising like fiery arrows into the sky, their engines roaring with unimaginable force. Inside these rockets, wheels were everywhere, silent but essential. Gyroscopes, tiny wheels spinning at incredible speeds, kept rockets balanced, guiding them through the chaos of launch. Without these spinning wheels of stability, no spacecraft could have pierced the heavens. And then came one of humanity's greatest achievements, the moon landing of 1969. When Apollo 11 touched down on the dusty lunar surface, the world held its breath. But even here, on the silent plains of the moon, wheels were waiting. Later missions carried the lunar roving vehicle small, electric cars designed to explore the barren world beyond Earth. Its wire mesh wheels rolled across craters and dust, proving that the wheel could serve not only the farmer's field or the city street, but also the surface of another world. Humanity had brought the oldest invention of civilization to the newest frontier. The wheel became a companion in exploration of distant worlds. On Mars, robotic rovers like Spirit, Opportunity, and Curiosity traveled across alien landscapes, their wheels pressing into red dust billions of kilometers away. Each turn of those wheels carried the questions of humanity. Are we alone? What secrets lie hidden in the rocks of Mars? The wheel had become a messenger, extending human curiosity to planets our feet had never touched. But space was not the only stage where the wheel played its role. On Earth, science and military technology reshaped its purpose once again. Tanks, with their tracks and wheels, redefined warfare. Jet engines, filled with turbines spinning like furious wheels, propelled machines faster than the speed of sound. Satellites circling above the Earth relied on reaction wheels spinning disks that helped them turn and point with precision in the vacuum of space. In silence, invisible to most, these wheels guided the very satellites that carried our communication, our weather forecasts, even the signals of our phones. The wheel was no longer only physical. It became a metaphor for cycles in science and technology. In particle accelerators, giant machines, built to unlock the secrets of matter, beams of particles raced in circular paths, spinning endlessly at near-light speeds. The wheel was reborn as energy itself, guiding physicists to discoveries that redefined the universe. Everywhere, the wheel was climbing higher. On highways, cars sped faster than ever, their tires gripping asphalt with precision engineered by centuries of innovation. In the skies, airplanes touched down on wheels built to endure the fury of landing. In hospitals, CT scanners and centrifuges, machines of healing, relied on wheels turning with delicate precision to diagnose disease and save lives. The wheel had become invisible, yet indispensable. From the gears inside a child's toy to the turbines of nuclear power plants, from the smallest laboratory device to the grandest spacecraft, The wheel carried humanity's ambitions without pause, and as humanity stared deeper into the cosmos, the wheel promised more. Engineers dreamed of Mars colonies where rovers would roll like tractors across alien soil. Concepts of rotating space stations, vast wheel-shaped habitats appeared in visions of the future, spinning to create artificial gravity for travelers beyond Earth. The image was almost poetic, humanity building giant wheels in the sky, not as machines, but as new homes. The story of the wheel was no longer just about transportation. It had become a story of imagination, of possibility, wherever humans dreamed of going across continents, through oceans, into the heavens. The wheel was there, carrying the weight of ambition. From wooden carts to titanium rovers, from clay pots to orbiting satellites, the wheel had traveled farther than its inventors could have ever imagined, and yet its journey was not finished. The next chapter awaited the digital age, where the wheel would turn in ways even stranger, more powerful, and more invisible than ever before. The wheel had carried us from the dust of Mesopotamia to the surface of the moon. It had turned in fields, on roads, in factories, and even in the silence of space. But as humanity entered the 21st century, the wheel began a transformation unlike anything in history. It became smaller, faster, invisible, and yet more powerful than ever before. In the digital age, wheels still turned, but they were hidden inside machines. Look inside a computer, and you will find tiny cooling fans spinning like miniature wheels, keeping the heartbeat of technology alive. Look inside hard drives, and you will see disks rotating thousands of times per minute, storing the memories of humanity in magnetic circles. These were not wheels carrying carts across land, but wheels carrying data across time. Factories of the modern world became cathedrals of spinning motion, assembly lines filled with gears, and conveyor belts created by countless wheels delivered products to billions, from cars to smartphones, from medicines to satellites. Every modern creation relied on wheels in silent partnership. Robotics carried the story further. Wheels became legs for machines. Rolling robots explored disaster zones, searched for survivors, and mapped places too dangerous for human feet. In warehouses, swarms of small-wheeled robots carried packages across vast floors, creating the nervous system of global trade. Each turning wheel was part of a living network, connecting billions of people across continents. The wheel even shaped the dreams of artificial intelligence. Imagine a self-driving car, sensors glowing, processors calculating, and wheels carrying the passenger forward without human touch. Here, the wheel was not just controlled by man, it was guided by the brain of a machine. A journey that had once begun with a farmer pushing a wooden cart now stood at the edge of vehicles, thinking for themselves, and yet the wheel's influence was not confined to machines. It lived in the imagination of human culture, the very symbol of progress, the cycle of time. The circle of life was drawn from the wheel. In religions across the world, the wheel represented eternity, wisdom, and the endless turning of existence. From the Dharma wheel of Buddhism to the circular shields of warriors, the wheel had always been more than wood and stone. It was an image of destiny itself. The 21st century brought new frontiers. Engineers dreamed of Hyperloop trains, capsules racing through tunnels, their magnetic wheels replaced by fields of energy, yet still born of the same principle. Space agencies envisioned massive rotating stations, wheels in the sky creating artificial gravity for pioneers of the future. The shape of the wheel remained eternal, even as its substance changed from clay to steel, from steel to silicon, from silicon to light itself. Even in art and storytelling, the wheel held its power. Movies showed futures where giant ring-shaped ships spun silently between the stars. Writers imagined worlds where time itself was a wheel, turning endlessly, with civilizations rising and falling like spokes in motion. And through it all, the wheel reminded humanity of its humble beginnings, from the cracked clay wheel of an unknown Mesopotamian craftsman to the golden rims of interplanetary rovers. The journey was more than mechanical, it was human. Every turn of the wheel echoed the spirit of invention, the courage to move forward, and the desire to explore what lies beyond the horizon. Today, the wheel is everywhere, yet invisible. It is in your phone, your car, your city, your dreams. It is in the satellites above your head and the machines beneath your feet. It is in the cycle of seasons, the hands of a clock, the flow of history itself. And tomorrow, when humanity builds colonies on Mars or sails among the stars, the wheel will turn again, perhaps not made of wood or stone or even metal, but the circle will remain. For as long as humans dream, the wheel will carry them forward. The story of the wheel is the story of us, from the first spark of civilization to the endless frontier of the future. It is the turning circle that never stops. The wheel does not simply move humanity, it defines humanity.